fall of 2015, the University of Texas signed a 15-year deal with Nike to the tune of $250 million. This deal is a combination of cash, apparel, uniforms, footwear, and internships for students. It will also give some funding in non-athletic activities. This surpasses the $169 million deal with Michigan and Adidas at the largest deal in college history. In 2014, EA Sports, which is the leading sports video game manufacturer, discontinued the popular NCAA football game due to lawsuits and criticism from the athletes in the game. Athletes believe they should receive royalties for being on the game just like the pros do. There are rumors the game might make a comeback in the future, but there has been no confirmation. EA Sports also makes the Madden game, which is named after legendary John Madden. It is the NFL version of NCAA football. The average payout for an athlete to be on the cover of this game is around $150,000. On top of that, EA pays the NFL Players Association $50 million in royalties and rights, which is split among the players. This is why some college players want to be paid, and we will visit two athletes, former and current, in this video. One is Cody Powers. He plays for Western State University football, and one is Corey Hilliard. He was a track athlete at Minnesota State Moorhead and is now an athletic director at the University of Colorado. He knows much more about this insight than I do. We'll make an interview with him later.
With you leaving meetings 15-20 minutes early.
Do a lot of guys work or no?
Actually, a lot of guys do work study.
Okay.
But
through the school?
It's not like it's only a certain amount of hours and pay for a semester, so it's not a lot of money all the time.
All of our budget finances. I'm our Chief Financial Officer in support of our 17 sport programs. for the Buffaloes.
What is the overall budget for athletics?
Currently, the overall operating budget is around $70 million. That includes revenues from ticket sales, conference distribution, donations, and institutional support.
Within that budget, what's the budget for football specifically?
Last fiscal year, the football operating budget was around $17 million, and that includes all game day operations, salaries, the team operating budget, which includes recruiting and everything, and that represents about 24% of the $70 million overall department budget.
What kind of revenue does football make yearly?
So currently, the ticket revenue and conference distribution are the largest components of the football operating revenues. That's around $28 million a year, which is 40% of our overall budget. The conference distribution piece is one of the largest as a result of the TV contract, and so the deal with the Pac-12 for the Pac-12 network, ESPN, Fox, generates around $14 million by itself, and that is largely in part because of our status in the Pac-12 conference as a Power 5 school.
There's a statement, if our football team is winning games, we are making money. Do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that statement. The revenue generation of the football program is large enough to put in contrast with our other Olympic sports to support those programs. So if you think about, again, ticket revenue and TV revenue, the only other sport that has a chance to net revenue would be men's basketball. But all the other Olympic sports, because of the interest in those, do not generate enough revenue on their own to cover their expenses. So we need football to be successful to generate enough revenue to cover everything else.
With the newfound argument of paying student athletes, what are your feelings towards that?
I think the argument related to paying student athletes is fair from both sides. As a student athlete, which you always like to reference them as, they're provided tuition and fees and books and cost of attendance that does allow them to be a successful student while they're participating in that should be factored into the overall revenues or costs that they're looking at as they're a student. So compared to a regular student that is not on scholarship through athletics, they're walking out of Colorado with anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 in student loan debt, and that's something that a student athlete doesn't have to take on. And at the same time, we're providing them other resources through the athletic program to provide support to get them through college. So academic support, training table, all the tools necessary to be successful.
What was your experience like being a student athlete in college?
So my experience was different as it was a long time ago, back in the early 90s, and running track. And so those two pieces have seen dramatic increases since then. So what I had access to was similar in the context of scholarships and support for academics and books and studying, but I think the changes that have been happening in the last several years with facility upgrades and apparel and things like that have given the current student athlete a lot more items to be successful and more comfortable during their tenure as a student athlete.
In the future, what would you like to see out of the NCAA regarding students and funding?
I think the landscape of the NCAA has seen some significant changes in the last several years. Related to your previous questions, cost of attendance being the most recent change, so giving the student athletes additional spending dollars to help them cover their day-to-day expenses or travel to and from home if there was an emergency is something that is very needed, and I think something we were able to do as a benefit of being in a Power 5 conference. The concerns that I have are there's only 65 of those programs in the country in the big conferences, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, etc. The other conferences don't have that luxury of the revenues from the TV contracts and whatnot. And so you're going to see a continued of the NCAA to the Power 5 schools operating under different rules than what you see like the Big West or the Big Sky or the Mountain West or other conferences at lower levels that don't have those resources available to them to compete.